Well, here we go on another lesson, lesson number 41, and it begins on Revelation chapter 20, verse 1. And I hope everybody's still sticking with this. We're getting near the end, so there's not much more to go, but it's the good part. We're getting to the good part. We're not there yet. And reading from Revelation chapter 20, verses 1 to 3. And I saw an angel coming down out of heaven, having the key to the abyss, and holding in his hand a great chain. He seized the dragon, that ancient serpent, who is the devil, or Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years. He threw him into the abyss, locked and sealed it over him, to keep him from deceiving the nations any more until the 1,000 years were ended. After that, he must be set free for a short time. We see here 1,000 years. We find the word millennium used a lot in these discussions, and that's what it means, a Latin word meaning 1,000 years. And it's literally 1,000 years. It's not something that a long time or anything like that. It will be for 1,000 years. We find that this chapter chapter 20 is really a continuation from chapter 19, and the chapters were just put there for easy reference, and they don't always break at a good time, and this is one of those occasions. In Revelation 19, we see the visible appearance of Christ in his glory and in his triumph, and then we find the binding of Satan and his being sent to the abyss. But the angel doesn't simply restrain Satan with a chain. He's also throws Satan into the abyss, then locks and seals the door. This clearly indicates that Satan is totally removed from the earth for 1,000 years. In the next section, John, writing on behalf of Jesus, gives us a view of the millennium and what it means for you and me and for the saints. It says, we will reign with Christ. 20 verses 4 to 6. I saw thrones on which were seated those who had been given authority to judge, and I saw the souls of those who had been beheaded because of their testimony for Jesus and because of the word of God. They had not worshipped the beast or his image, and had not received his mark on their foreheads or their hands. They came to life and reigned with Christ 1,000 years. The rest of the dead did not come to life until the 1,000 years were ended. This is the first resurrection. Blessed and holy are those who have part in the first resurrection. The second death has no power over them, but they will be priests of God and of Christ, and will reign with him for 1,000 years. Notice here we have three different groups in this passage that are mentioned here. First, John sees thrones upon which are seated those who had been given authority to judge. And who are these judges seated on the thrones in the Lord's millennium kingdom? Well, let's compare this passage with the Lord's promise to his disciples when he says, I tell you the truth, at the renewal of all things, when the Son of Man sits on his glorious throne, you who have followed me will also sit on 12 thrones, judging 12 tribes of Israel. Jesus says that the 12 disciples will be given authority to judge the nations of Israel. And so the 12 tribes, 12 apostles. And the, the 12 are not the only ones who will be judging during this 1,000 year, this millennium time of year. At the beginning of this vision, going way back to the first few lessons, Jesus told the believers in Thyatira that all overcomers will rule with Christ during the millennium. So in Revelation 2:26, he says, "To him who overcomes and does my will to the end, I will give authority over the nations. He will rule them with an iron scepter. He will dash them to pieces like pottery." That's in Revelation 2:26 and 27. That is a reference to that. So the believers of this age, us, in this present age, will be allied with Christ during this 1,000-year reign. And that's why Paul said to the Corinthians, "Do you not know that the saints will judge the world? And further, do you not know that we will judge angels?" And he points to the Corinthians that were saints were willing someday they would be judging angels, and nations should certainly that will make sure that we're all going to be have a part in this reign, this 1,000-year reign. Now there's another group we talked about reigning with Christ, and that's the martyrs of the tribulation, those who had been beheaded because of their testimony, their testimony for Christ, and they had not worshipped the beast. They did not have the mark of the beast on their forearm or on their forehead, and they remained faithful for all this time. And because of their faithfulness, they were beheaded, and these people lost their lives. They were persecuted and killed for their faith, but they will reign with Christ as well. And then there's a third group, and they are mentioned, but they are not mentioned as those who will rule or reign with Christ. They do not reign. He says, the rest of the dead did not come to life until the 1,000 years were ended. These are the unbelieving dead, and of course they'll have to appear before the great white throne on Judgment Day, and we'll find that at the end of Revelation. So, person dies without Christ, according to this, they don't immediately end up in hell or in a place of torment and separation from Christ in the final stage. They are just sleeping. They are dead, but they'll be brought back and judged, and then they will have the time with Satan and all his followers into that fiery pit. But for a period of time until after the millennium, it says here that they have not been brought to life. It's only the believers that have the joy of being with Christ after they die during this period. And so sometimes people ask, what happens when a person dies? Well, if you're a Christian, then you are with Christ. If you're not a Christian, nothing happens for a while, but then is the judgment day, and then is the time of torment. So that's important, and we should make sure that we are right with Christ, right with God, and we should be concerned about those who we love, our family members and friends, and invite them to seek out Christ, to study and turn their lives over to Jesus. So there is a judgment day coming, and we're going to get to that. When you die, you don't die like a dog, and that's it. There is a judgment day. So we'll leave it at that, and we will move on to the next section in the next lesson. So that this is the end of lesson 41. Thanks for joining me.